Hello again, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us for this Saturday's edition of Alaska Weather on the 14th day of May 2022. I'm David Percy, and I'll be hosting today's show. Up first on the breakup map, you can see Yukon River has quite a stretch of mostly open all the way from Canada there downstream until you get into that boxed area there east of the Seward Peninsula, where it links up there with the Koyukuk River, and then it gets mostly ice downstream from there, and then opens up a little more, some open areas there across the Yukon Delta. And of course, Tanana River is open. Koyukuk, quite a stretch of mostly open water there, but the Kobuk and of course North Slope rivers still pretty well iced in. And there's still a flood warning out for Glen Allen. You can see the green box down there should be red, but that indicating the flood warning remains out for Glen Allen, north of the Glen Highway. That's until 10 a.m. Sunday morning. And flooding of Moose Creek and the surrounding areas is continuing, and that's why the flood warning is remaining out. No ice jams, just melting snow, keeping the river levels high. Moving on to the hazardous weather graphics, there are no advisories, watches, or warnings out other than that flood warning I spoke of at Glen Allen around the state, and looking good out in the Bering Sea. Nothing but high pressure out there controlling the weather. And looking at the satellite, that high over the central and southern Bering Sea, dominating the Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula. Coming over the top of the high, you can see yet another massive moisture weather system coming from, sliding eastward from the Russian Far East, and that already spreading increasing winds and light precipitation along the capes of the western Arctic coast. Cape Lisbon, Point Hope, for example, winds kicking up to 35 miles an hour out of the south at Point Hope, with some light snow and wind and some light moisture increasing down into the Bering Strait there. But in advance of that, high pressure, mostly clear skies across the western interior, Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta, Bristol Bay, Alaska Peninsula there. Got some showers working into the east side of Kodiak Island today, with a little bit of light shower activity early on. You can see the clouds circulating in from the east and northeast there, and also clouds that brought with the upper level low over the eastern interior. Showers diminishing through the afternoon here, but still quite a widespread area of cloudiness along and north of the Alaska Range, northern Kuskokwim Valley, with some scattered shower activity mainly over the mountainous terrain of Talkeetnas and the Alaska Range. And rainfall over the Panhandle, southern areas. Ketchikan picked up 1/3 of an inch in the last 12 hours, while Tok there, up in the there near Northway, Tok had about 1/4 of an inch of rain, one of the showers moving across that area. And rolling this through again, you can see quite a mass of moisture over the Northwest Territories of Canada. That won't make it into the state, although it looks like it's heading toward the border, but it won't quite make it. On the chart today, low pressure well southeast of Kodiak Island, extensive enough that it is circulating a trough there right off the east side of Kodiak Island for a little bit of moisture there, and also into the southern southeast coast. High pressure, mostly sunny skies, Arctic coast all the way down into Bristol Bay along the southwest coast. Again, mostly clear skies, Norton Sound all the way down to the Alaska Peninsula. Dry, light winds, and variably sunny conditions out over the Aleutians and the Bering Sea. And that next system approaching the Bering Strait coast and the Chukchi Sea with that low center near Wrangel Island, that slips eastward into the Chukchi Sea. That'll keep the rain and increasing snow western Arctic coast down to about Point Hope. Mixture precipitation from there with lighter winds. In fact, winds will diminish all along that system as it weakens and starts to get sheared apart in that north-northwest flow, taking the southern portion southward toward the Alaska Peninsula. But enough eastward movement that it'll make landfall, the precipitation, and move eastward, possibly as far east as the Kuskokwim Mountains late tonight, and covering the Seward Peninsula. And then still some shower activity, eastern Alaska Range, central eastern Copper River Basin, Wrangles, even the North Gulf Coast, and precipitation and winds start to increase there in the south coast of the Panhandle late tonight with that system to the southwest. That tomorrow will bring small craft advisory level winds into the south coast, especially along Prince of Wales Island up to about Mount Edgecombe or Port Alexander, and rain into the southern Panhandle, more showery conditions to the north, but a dry day for the North Gulf Coast coming up, and still a risk of some light shower activity along the Alaska Range, especially over the upper Tanana Valley, 40-mile country, kind of mostly cloudy with scattered showers tomorrow throughout the day, slowly diminishing, and then the remnants of that system really kind of goes to pieces. The low center tracks in towards Shelikof Strait. That'll bring some shower activity into Kodiak Island once again. A little bit better chance maybe on the southwest side, the Shelikof Strait side of the island, than what you saw today. And showers there with that moisture dropping southward. Rain and showers for the Alaska Peninsula to the eastern Aleutians, and brisk north winds, maybe gusts of 30 miles an hour, Nikolsky and Dutch Harbor on up along the southwest coast. And high pressure continues out west, and then it starts to slide a little bit east, but still controls the Bering Sea and the Aleutians weather-wise. Very weak disturbance on the north side of that, really not much of a factor as that original system tracks eastward, bringing snow and probably some gusty winds to the eastern Arctic coast there. Enough of a gradient there, but nothing too strong, and precipitation on the quite light side. Otherwise, showers of rain and snow, again, along the central eastern Alaska Range, upper Tanana Valley, down across the Copper River Basin to the eastern North Gulf Coast, and into the Panhandle. Another system there approaching the coast increases the chance of rain, probably not until evening there for the southern southeast coast. Lows tonight down that way, upper 30s to lower 40s, and in the 30s across south central Alaska, lower 30s Copper River Basin, upper 20s, mid to upper 20s for the Kuskokwim Valley, upper 20s, lower 30s for Bristol Bay, and 15 to 20 for the Brooks Range and eastern Arctic coast, otherwise in the 20s for the western Arctic coast, especially with those southerly winds from St. Lawrence Island on up across Tin City to Kivalina, upper 30s for the Aleutians. Highs for tomorrow in the 50s over the interior areas and 55 to 60 for the southeast coast. And it looks like Bettle's looking at a high near 50, 53 for Fort Yukon, otherwise 30 to 35. Arctic coast and North Slope lows on Monday morning in the teens for the Arctic coast, North Slope, and 20s for the Brooks Range, upper 20s to mid 30s over the interior, 35 to 40 south of the Alaska Range, lower 30s for Bristol Bay. Looking at highs back into the 50s over much of interior Alaska, 20s along the Arctic coast.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Flying weather, band of IFR with the next system coming into the east from the eastern Bering Sea into the west coast there, pushing inland across the Yukon Kuskokwim Delta with marginal VFR up to the Kuskokwim Mountains. VFR central interior, some marginal VFR on the east side, and especially the upper Tanana Valley 40-mile country with some early IFR there along the eastern Alaska Range on down to the eastern North Gulf Coast. Marginal VFR along the coast of the Panhandle. You can see good VFR right on down to Bristol Bay, Kodiak Island, all of the Aleutians, southern Bering Sea. And for the afternoon, pretty good area of IFR, central eastern Bering Sea, but not reaching the coast, but making its way to Nunivak Island and northward through the Bering Strait coastal areas there, or continuing, kind of splitting off with the other batch up along the western Arctic coast and North Slope. VFR interior Alaska, still some marginal VFR areas of over the upper Tanana Valley 40-mile country and the eastern upper Yukon River there. Right on down across central western Copper River Basin, Prince William Sound, possibly getting into Portage there, eastern Turnagain Arm, and maybe down to Resurrection Bay on the southern Kenai Peninsula. But IFR now into the Adak-Yatka area and the north shores of Unalaska and Nunivak Island, as well as the Alaska Peninsula. And for Monday morning, got some IFR, north coast Arctic coast, North Slope, Eastern Brooks Range, of the band extending southwestward across the Koyukuk Valley into Norton Sound and the Yukon Delta, on down across the Pribilofs to the central Aleutians, and some VFR to the southeast of that band in the mid-Tanana Valley, Fairbanks VFR for Monday morning, but about Eielson or Hope on, or not Hope, call it Eielson there, North Pole, on down to the Eastern Brooks Range, Eastern Alaska Range, Copper River Basin VFR, Kenai Peninsula, Marginal VFR, and Marginal VFR, Yakutat on down the coast of the Panhandle, even the inside waters. And for Monday afternoon, IFR, Eastern Arctic Coast and North Slope, and more IFR there, Central Western Aleutians into the Bering Sea, Marginal VFR for the Pribilofs from Fox Islands, VFR for the Southwest Coast, and the Bering Strait there, St. Lawrence Island right up to the northwest coast, including Kivalina, Point Hope, Cape Lisburne, all VFR, and a little bit of marginal VFR right along the central and eastern Alaska range there, maybe into the Wrangels, but nothing too serious. VFR, though, right on down into the Gulf of Alaska, Kodiak Island, marginal for the Panhandle. Passes Anatuvik tomorrow, looking pretty good there for the Brooks Range, both VFR and either approach. Lake Clark and Merrill, pretty nice conditions for the Western Alaska Range. VFR flying, rainy, same forecast, VFR. Windy, VFR also. Isabel, though, looks marginal tomorrow at times throughout the day, as well as Mentasta. And for Tanita, marginal VFR becoming VFR in the afternoon. Portage, optimistically, I'm going to go VFR, either side, west or east. And for Chilcoot and White, looking good, VFR. Freezing levels, warm air aloft out over the Bering Sea, especially the northwest Bering Sea. You can see 8,000 to 10,000 feet out there, and about 2,000 feet over much of mainland Alaska, right on down into the Gulf and the Panhandle. Icing between 5,000 and 11,000 feet, isolated moderate rime or mixed icing over the Panhandle, and mostly over the eastern interior. And then with the moisture coming into the Bering Sea there, or across the Bering Sea, we've got some icing possibilities. St. Lawrence Island, Western Seward Peninsula, and the Western Arctic coast. Jet stream, cold upper trough over mainland Alaska, and high pressure ridging, warm ridge out there with those 10,000 foot freezing levels over the northwest Bering Sea. And between those two features, we've got northerly winds, 110 to 135 knots there, through the Bering Strait and the eastern Bering Sea across the Alaska Peninsula, 9,000 feet, much lighter, same pattern though. Northerlies, but about 40 knots there, and 3,000 feet, showing a little bit stronger winds than at 9,000 here at 3,000, with the high over the southwest Bering and a low south of Kodiak. Northerlies 55 to 60 knots there. Bering Sea clipping the Pribilofs across the eastern Aleutians. Southeast 45 there, just west of Dixon Entrance. Turbulence-wise, look for moderate chop to develop over the southern Panhandle, and considerable moderate chop there for the Alaska Peninsula to Atka Island, as well as St. Lawrence Island. After the break, I'll be back with the marine forecasts.
When you think of a national park, you probably envision wide open natural spaces undisturbed by human activity. There are indeed such places, but even in some of the most remote areas of a place like Kenai Fjords National Park in Alaska, the mark of man is present. Marine debris is a menace to the farthest reaches of our globe, and even designated national park lands are not immune. In the summer of 2009, the Resurrection Bay Conservation Alliance, a grassroots conservation organization based in Seward, Alaska, decided to do something about the marine debris fouling the beaches of Kenai Fjords National Park. Marine debris coordinator Tim Johnson had first-hand experience with the issue.
The summer before, my wife and I, Michelle, had done a paddle from Seward, sea kayak paddle from Seward to Homer. Really, our eyes were open to some areas that we didn't realize there was so much accumulation. It was very deceiving up front. You couldn't really get a feel for the extent and impact of it. You've got this nice high tide line that's quite pristine, and you really don't get a picture for the impact, the amount of debris in that area until you get behind those storm berms. You get back into the lagoons and the vegetation around those lagoons. And then you see the absolute extent back into that veg and how intertwined and enmeshed these decades of trash deposition. So we were just appalled by that and said we got to get something together on a larger scale.
The Resurrection Bay Conservation Alliance is a local nonprofit community organization, and they have been instrumental in helping the Park Service obtain funding to get larger boats to help move the debris, and they get volunteer labor and organize the work trips. And so it's really a partnership between the Park Service and the community to help get out and really get a project done that in and of itself any one group couldn't do on their own.
Most of that trash was baggable. However, there were large items, huge, piles of hauser line, for example, that we just had to hoist up onto the boat.
The volunteers didn't just bag, haul, and hoist the garbage, but also carefully recorded what types of debris were collected.
In many ways, the debris itself is a resource. Archaeologists use middens, the trash heaps, as a way of analyzing past cultures. And in one sense, marine debris is a form of a midden. It's a trash heap that left for the future would be something that people could use to analyze our culture. It may not say the best things about our culture or everything that we want, but we need to be able to document what we've done so that we can preserve that legacy, make sure that we as a society don't forget what we've been doing.
We had two larger categories of marine debris that we picked up. Commercial fishing means like, say, gill nets, large hauser lines, anything that would be associated with more of a commercial fishing scale. And then the second category was more recreational fishing and household, which would be general plastics, things like that. So we had about a 75% of the commercial fishing marine debris element, and about 25% of the recreational and household further out the bay. And we had the exact opposite the closer we got to Seward. Within the bay, it was about 25% commercial fishing versus 75% recreational fishing and household.
The trash is not just unsightly for park visitors, but also poses threats to wildlife and marine habitat.
Really one of the larger issues now that you go to this plastic that can really get into the food web and affect the food web differently than something like glass.
These substances, for instance, all these polystyrene blocks that are breaking down into all these little crumbly bits are further breaking down on a microscopic level, and how much of an impact that has, in this ecosystem is yet to be determined, but I think it's got pretty high potential.
Well known that sea turtles will eat plastic bags floating in the water. They look like jellyfish to a sea turtle, and obviously a plastic bag doesn't go well in the digestive system of a turtle. Albatross will see small pieces of plastic floating on the surface and think they're small fish and other food sources, and eat that in their stomachs, especially in some of the northwestern Hawaiian Islands. They'll find dead albatross that have starved to death with a full stomach, and it's full of pieces of plastic.
We're affecting our local areas this way, but we need to be thinking about it from more of a state and global, international scale. And most importantly, to try and focus on prevention of it coming in the first place. Because we're just going to see this continuing, to build up on our beaches unless we're able to get a little bit more of an approach on prevention on the front end.
Marine debris is really a global problem, in all the oceans, and there are many different sources. Global shipping is one. Fishing debris from commercial fishing, recreational boating activity on land, stuff blowing off land, washing down streams, people just throwing stuff on the shore.
Though the problem can seem overwhelming, Johnson remains upbeat about making a positive difference.
No, you gotta start locally. You gotta take control of what you can do, and make something with that, and try and move on from there.
Overall, more than 9 tons of debris was removed from the beaches of Kenai Fjords National Park and transported back to Seward to be deposited in a landfill.
People gave a lot to the project in order to make it happen. That was awesome. One of the most amazing experiences I've ever had. Being able to put that large of a group of volunteers together, dedicated volunteers to put that much effort and give that much time and pull all the different agencies together to see it all happen was incredible. It was incredible. Yeah, very fulfilling experience.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
For Sunday, there are small craft advisories over the southern panhandle for that incoming system. On the outer coastline, south outer coastline, east to southeast winds 25 knots, seas building to just under 10 feet. For Clarence Strait, southeast winds increasing to 25 knots with 5-foot seas. Otherwise, Stevens Passage, Lincoln Glacier Bay, central and northern inside waters, looking at northerlies for the day Sunday at 15 knots, and 15 to 20 knot winds on the north coast. Then for the, next day, Monday, small craft advisories, central and south coast for the south coast, southeast winds 30 knots, seas 12 feet. And for the north coast, east-southeast winds 20 to 25 knots. Clarence Strait, southeast 25 knot winds in the forecast with 5-foot seas, and the central and northern inside waters looking at a south to southeast wind at 15 knots. Moving on, Prince William Sound, east winds 20 knots, seas 4 feet. North Gulf Coast, variable winds 15 knots, seas 4 to 5 feet. Small craft advisories for the Barren Islands and Kamishak Bay. Northwest winds 25 knots. Cook Inlet, variable winds at 10 knots with slight seas. And for Monday, Cook Inlet, north winds 15 knots, seas 3 feet. Prince William Sound, northeast at 10 with 2-foot seas. North Gulf Coast, northeast 15 knots, 4 to 6-foot seas. Barren Islands, Kamishak Bay, north to northwest winds at 20 knots, seas 4 feet. Kodiak Island, north to northwest winds 15 to 20 knots for the day Sunday. Alaska Peninsula, northwest 20 to 25 knots, and Bristol Bay, west winds at 15 knots, seas 3 feet. And for Monday, Alaska Peninsula, northwest winds 25 knots with 5 to 7-foot seas. Bristol Bay, northwest to 20 with 5-foot seas. Kodiak Island, northwest 15 to 20 knots. And for the eastern Aleutians, small craft advisories tomorrow for west-northwest winds 25 to 30 knots, seas running 5 to 7 feet. Adak and Atka, north to northwest winds at 20 knots with 3-foot seas. And for the western Aleutians, east-northeast at 15. And for Monday, Kiskadeshimia, southeast winds 20 knots, seas 5 feet. And for Adak and Atka, north to northeast winds at 20 knots. Small craft advisories for the Fox Islands for north winds at 25 knots, seas around 8 feet. And for the Yukon Delta coast, small craft advisories, northwest winds 25 knots. Same forecast for St. Matthew Island and the Pribilofs, all looking at a northwest wind tomorrow 25 knots. Kuskokwim Delta coast, west at 20 knots. And for St. Lawrence Island, winds will be north on Sunday at 20 knots, seas around 5 feet. Norton Sound, just a light northeast breeze at 10 knots. And for Monday, Norton Sound, north at 15, seas at about 3 feet. Small craft advisory, St. Lawrence Island, north winds 25 knots, with seas at 6 feet. Yukon Delta coast, north winds 20 knots. Back to small craft advisories for the Kuskokwim Delta coast for northwest winds at 25 knots. And also small craft advisories for the Pribilof Islands, where winds will be north at 25. And for the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, south to southeast winds 15 to 20 knots. Central coast, southwest at 20 knots. Then brisk wind advisories from the western Arctic coast to Cape Thompson for north winds at 25 knots. Cape Thompson to Wales, northeast winds at 20 knots. And jumping ahead, taking a look at conditions for Monday. Eastern Beaufort Sea coast, north to northwest winds 15 to 20 knots, north at 15 for the central coast. Lighter winds, though, on the western Arctic coast, looking at a north wind on average at about 10 knots. Cape Thompson to Cape Beaufort, northeast winds 15 knots. Cape Thompson to Wales, winds will be out of the north at 20 knots. For tonight, system coming across the northern Bering Sea and the Chukchi Sea spreads another round of light precipitation in the form of rain or snow, mostly snow for the western Arctic coast. And rain and snow for the area from the northwest coast, Seward Peninsula, Norton Sound, right into the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta. That'll start to slide into the Alaska Peninsula late tonight. Fair skies over the central interior from Kodiak Island to the eastern Arctic coast, lingering but diminishing rain and snow showers over the southeast part of the interior, and increasing wind and rain starting to push into the southern panhandle, the south coast, late tonight, and then rain, central and southern areas, gusty southeast winds, more showery to the north. Another dry day for the North Gulf Coast. And for Monday, chance of snow on the eastern Beaufort Sea coast.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.